Welcome from Indianapolis. I am Derwin Smiley. On today's show, we will have a conversation with Mr. David Harris, the CEO and founder of the Mind Trust. I am glad you are with me. A conversation with Mr. David Harris starts right now. Mr. David Harris is the founder and CEO of the Mind Trust. Mr. Harris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's an honor. We have been trying to get you on the show, and I just want you to know it is an honor to have you on to talk about this very innovative program that you have founded. But first, tell me about who is Mr. David Harris?
Well, I was born and raised in Indianapolis, and my family all lives here. I've got a wife, and we've got 3 kids, 2 boys and a little girl. I was originally started my professional career, well, right after college. I had a fellowship in Governor By's office and worked briefly for the Indiana Department of Commerce, but then went on to law school, was a lawyer at Baker & Daniels, but got very involved in Mayor Peterson's mayoral campaign in 1999, and he had a real passion for education reform, and particularly at that time, charter schools. And I really, because of him, became very passionate about education and education reform, and developed a deep conviction that every kid, no matter what their circumstances, no matter what kind of economic situation they may come from, every kid can excel if we provide them with an excellent education. And we need, as a community, to make sure that every single child can develop his or her God-given talents, and that's really what has motivated me to be involved in this work.
What is wrong or what is broken with Indianapolis Public Schools or the Indianapolis school system as a whole?
Well, there are a lot of good things that are happening in our public education system, and of course we have some wonderfully talented educators who are doing amazing work for kids. But we still aren't getting overall the results that we want when less than half of the kids, for example, in IPS aren't able to pass both the math and English language section of the I-STEP, when less than half of kids aren't graduating if you exclude kids who are graduating with waivers. We know that we can do better than that. We know that those 3,349 kids who dropped out of IPS over the last 5 years, if we had provided them with the right supports, could have done better, could have gone on to graduate, and a lot of them go on to college. And for us, the basic belief we have is that when you empower talented teachers and talented principals, you get great results. So one, we need to make sure that we're supporting the great teachers and principals that we have in IPS today, and we have a lot of them. We need to have strategies for bringing more great talent into the system, and then we need to give them the autonomy to really run their schools the way they see fit. Let them innovate, let them be creative, let them come up with solutions that best meet the needs of their kids, but then hold them accountable. We should hold them accountable in a few ways. One, the central office, one of its very important, but we would argue limited roles should be holding schools accountable, but they should also, and most importantly, be accountable to parents. So we think schools, our public school system should be schools of choice. So parents can decide which school is the best fit for their kid, and if a school isn't meeting the needs of kids, parents can choose to go to another school.
Tell me about the Mind Trust and how it came about.
Well, I was working for Mayor Peterson at the time as the charter schools director. I was the first charter schools director for the city of Indianapolis. We had developed what really had become a national model for a charter authorizing office out of the mayor's office in 2006. We won Harvard's Innovations in American Government Award for our initiative. But we thought that the real key to driving education reform forward was bringing more talent into the system, and particularly entrepreneurial talent. When you look around the country at some of the schools and initiatives that are achieving extraordinary results with our kids, invariably they're led by really talented, innovative, entrepreneurial people. And so we wanted to attract as many of those folks as possible to our community. So we did a couple of things when we first got launched. We built a venture fund of about $5.5 million that we used to attract 5 of the best established national entrepreneurial education organizations, groups like Teach for America and the New Teacher Project that are bringing great teachers into the classroom, College Summit that's helping low-income kids navigate the college application process, and a few others. And we also created the nation's first incubator. So if someone who had an idea to do something transformational in education often had a very difficult time getting that initial seed support. And so we wanted to provide that initial seed support, an idea that we believed in and it wasn't done anywhere else. But we've been overwhelmed by the response. We've selected 7 people as part of that program out of an applicant pool of over 3,000 people from 48 states and 36 countries. So people from all over the United States are competing for the opportunity to come here and serve our kids. And some of the folks that are doing that, who are part of that program, are doing amazing work. More recently, we've launched a charter school incubator where we invest $1 million in teams of people who want to come here and start networks of charter schools. And again, we've attracted great talent both from our community and around the country to come and do that work. And we're going to continue to grow that charter incubator. And we've also gotten involved in some policy areas. Most notably, we came up with a plan in December for how to redesign IPS to get what we believe would be dramatically better results. And again, it's really it's a pro-teacher plan. It's a plan that believes that teachers are really everything and principals are incredibly important. And if we just bring more great principals and teachers here, empower the great principals and teachers we have in the system, and then hold them accountable, we're going to get really good results for our kids.
What's the plan of implementing the Mind Trust into the educational system?
So,
what is the plan, or how will you implement the program into the educational system?
So we've built a network of 12 organizations that are doing really important things. They're attracting great teachers into the classroom. They're preparing great school leaders. They're helping low-income kids navigate the college application process. They're using the summer months to close the achievement gap and doing a variety of things. And those programs today are all working with our public education system. So a lot of those programs are in IPS, some of the other townships. IPS was really a leader at the beginning of our organization and embracing these innovative programs. Teach for America and the New Teacher Project and College Summit were all initially launched in IPS. So we are working right now with kids in schools through the programs that we've supported. Our organization has already impacted the lives of 73,000 plus students in our community, and we're obviously continuing to grow that and expand that. So some of the organizations that we support have work outside the system to engage parents and teachers and family and community members in our education reform efforts, as well groups like Stand for Children that I know you had Kariga Rausch, who's the Indianapolis director, a terrific leader in our education reform community. So we work in a lot of different ways with schools, and both our traditional district schools and with charter schools and with our larger reform community.
Before we go to break, I want to throw this question. How do you know that the Mind Trust will work? Stay with us. We have to take a break.
不管我们的皮肤是什么颜色，
No importa el idioma que hablemos.
Неважно, какие пути мы выбираем.
One thing we have in common is that we all want better health.
イライリカンパニーでは
We understand.
Visit the Derwin Smiley Show online for weekly blogs, previous shows, the television schedule, sponsorship information, or to post a comment or show idea. We want to hear from you and find out how we can inspire the greatness in you. Log on to www.thederwinsmileyshow.com today.
Thank you for staying with us. We will continue our conversation with Mr. David Harris, the CEO and founder of the Mind Trust. Mr. Harris, before we went to break, I threw a question out so you can think about it when we came back. And I asked you, how do you know the Mind Trust, everything that you have spoken so highly of, will work?
Well, you know, a lot of what we want to do is to help inject new innovation into the system. So we're very keen on evaluating the success of the programs that we support. And of course, some of them are going to be more successful than others. But I think overall, the organizations that we've either helped incubate or that we've recruited from other parts of the country have been doing enormously well. And we're very careful to evaluate their performance. And you, depending on the kind of initiative, that the program is working on is how we evaluate them. So Teach for America and the New Teacher Project, for example, bring great teachers into the classroom. So we look what kind of academic gains are those teachers making with kids. Teach for America's elementary school teachers, for example, on average are making 1.6 years of academic gains in one academic year with their kids, which is the equivalent of about 106 additional days of schooling every year. College Summit is working with kids in a lot of school districts and charter schools in our community, and kids participating in College Summit are going to college at 2 to 4 times the rate of kids who are not participating in that program. Summer Advantage is an organization that's focused on using the summer months to close the achievement gap. So much talk about the achievement gap in this country, and most of the achievement gap is not attributable to in-school time, it's attributable to out-of-school time, and particularly the summer months. Summer Advantage worked with about 4,000 kids last summer, and in a 5-week program, those 4,000 kids on average made 2.5 months of gains in both reading and math. And so we want to look at what kind of impact these programs are having on the lives of kids, whether that's helping them make academic gains, whether that's helping them go on to college. We want to make sure that these programs are improving the lives of kids, and we have been fortunate to be able to work with tens of thousands of kids through our network throughout our community.
Something that I wanted to piggyback on is the incubator, charter school incubator. I think you said if somebody had a out of this world idea and how they can implement. Let's go a little bit more into that, because even in corporate America, a lot of people have great ideas but fail to bring it to the forefront because they don't think that it would go anywhere. So how does that work?
That is a terrific question, and that's exactly right. It's not enough to have a great idea, because a lot of people have great ideas. We're looking for both people who have great ideas for developing a school that can produce extraordinary results, and then the skill set to execute on that idea. So you need the combination. You need both the vision and then the entrepreneurial skill set required to actually turn that vision into reality and turn those schools into self-sustaining, ongoing, high-functioning schools that are going to continue to serve kids in our community for a very long time in a very high-quality way. And so that's why we set a very, very high bar. We select only a fraction of the people who apply because we put them through a very rigorous selection process. We do that both for the Charter School Incubator and for our Education Entrepreneur Fellowship, our first incubator. So it's a very, very high bar, but we think the results are what is really exciting to us.
I wanted to throw this in here when I asked you the question, how do you know that the Mind Trust will work? I know you know about the report that came out by IUPUI, the Center for Urban and Multicultural Education, and the premises that they had was that the Mind Trust really didn't have no evidence or research-based practices to support the gains that the Mind Trust is putting out there. So how do you reply to your critics?
No. Well, first of all, what IUPUI's report was focused on was not the work of any of our partners or the network that we've built. It was specifically in response to the plan that we produced for how to redesign IPS. And obviously, the district hasn't implemented that program, so we can't specifically point to any school and say what we recommended is working in IPS. But what we can do is point to schools around the country that are achieving extraordinary gains based on the principles that we've articulated. And again, we think it's pretty commonsensical. What we're saying is we empower great teachers and great principals, give them real freedom, the ability to innovate, the ability to determine how best to meet the needs of their kids and then hold them accountable. And there are scores of schools around the country that are showing that when you create that climate, when you create those conditions, you get great results. And an excellent example of that is a network of schools in Houston, Texas called Yes Prep. 8 schools, 4,000 kids. 80% of the kids in those 80% of the kids in those schools are economically disadvantaged. 95% of those kids are students of color. 96% across the 4,000 kids of those students are proficient in reading. 96% are proficient in math, and 90% are going on to graduate in 4 years. Many of whom are going on to some of the top colleges, not just in Texas, but around the country. When you create the conditions that empower educators, give them the freedom to determine how best to meet the needs of their kids, and then hold them accountable, you get great results. And so we have not seen any district in the country adopt a comprehensive plan like ours. This is an opportunity, we view. This was something that we thought was a positive vision for how to really transform IPS into a high-functioning district where virtually every student was proficient, where virtually every student was going on to graduate in 4 years. We've seen it done at individual school levels. It's an open question whether you can do it system-wide. We believe strongly that you can if you do the right things, invest in great teachers, invest in great principals, give them authority and autonomy, give parents choice. But we think we have an opportunity as a city to be really the first city in the country where you have an urban school system that at scale is fully meeting the needs of all the kids in the system.
I really want to go into how you said to make the Mind Trust system-wide. How will that happen? Because, you know, the setup of IPS in the public school system, how can an outside organization really come in and really overhaul the whole school system as a whole?
Well, let me be very clear. We're not suggesting that the Mind Trust come in and overhaul the school system. This is a set of recommendations that the leadership of the district would have to determine is something that they want to implement, and they would be responsible for implementing it. We're a small nonprofit. You know, there are 11 of us who work for our staff. We're not going to come in and take over anything. We're not going to run anything. We'd obviously be eager to be helpful and supportive in any way we could if there was a sense within the district that this is the kind of plan that they wanted to implement. But this is ultimately for the school district itself to determine whether or not it wants to move in this direction. There are people within the school system who've reacted very, very positively to the ideas, particularly at the teacher level. There are folks who are less enthusiastic about it. There's no question about that as well. But hopefully, we can continue to generate conversation about what it will take to produce a truly excellent school system at scale. And one of the reasons that we were pleased that IUPUI came out with its response, we were glad to our plan, we were glad that IPS came out with a response to our plan. We were glad that the NAACP came out with their own thinking about what's required. We were glad that the mayor's office and IPS and several other organizations co-convened conversations with the community about what's possible, to talk about what we can do to reform our school system. We wanted our report to trigger a conversation, to get people thinking about what can we do to produce dramatically better results. We know that if we do things differently, many, many more of our kids are going to excel. We know it's not acceptable, and nobody thinks it's acceptable, that half the kids can't pass both the math and English language arts section of the ISEP. We know we can do better than that, and so what's the best way to get there? And so we were happy that our report sparked that conversation. We've had a lot of discussion over the last year within our community. We need to continue to do that, and we'll see where that goes.
He is Mr. David Harris, the CEO and founder of the Mind Trust. Stay with us.
High blood pressure medication in Cleveland, Ohio.
Arthritis medicine in Caliente, California.
Cholesterol pills in Peoria, Illinois.
I'm Montel Williams. Mile by mile, Americans are getting help paying for medicine through the Partnership for Prescription Assistance.
PPA is a lifesaver.
I'm saving about $650.
It wasn't complicated at all.
5 days later, there was my medicine, and I jumped for joy.
If you need help, you don't have to wait for the bus to get on board. Just call 1-888-4PPA now to see if you may qualify. A trained specialist will help you apply. Just tell them the names of the medicine you take. You could get them free or nearly free.
With the PPA, I can take my medicine daily.
I would like to thank them 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times.
I've always heard where there's a will, there's a way, and I think this was our way.
So whether you're in Morgantown, West Virginia, or Bangor, Maine, call this free service at 1-888-4PPA now. The Partnership for Prescription Assistance, on the road to helping you.
Visit the Derwin Smiley Show online for weekly blogs, previous shows, the television schedule, sponsorship information, or to post a comment or show idea. We want to hear from you and find out how we can inspire the greatness in you. Log on to www.thederwinsmileyshow.com today.
Thank you for staying with us. We will continue our conversation with Mr. David Harris, the CEO and founder of the Mind Trust. Mr. Harris, I want to talk about your partnerships with getting the Mind Trust up and running. So how did this all come about?
Well, I was working in Mayor Peterson's office as the charter schools director, and we saw a need to really drive talent into our community. So Mayor Peterson and I co-founded it. We set out initially to just start to bring some of the best organizations from around the country here and to start incubating new initiatives to get people excited about what kind of work that we're doing. And it's really grown from then. One of the organizations, for example, that we recruited very early on in our organization's history was College Summit. And College Summit is focused on making sure that low-income kids are going on to college. We have a real opportunity to dramatically increase college matriculation rates among low-income folks if we just do some things differently. In this country, low-income kids with A and B averages go to college at the same rate as higher-income kids with D average. That's just unconscionable in a land of equal opportunity. We need to make sure that everybody who is college ready is going on to college. We lament all the kids who aren't graduating. Well, what about all these kids who are actually college ready, but we're not giving the supports they need to get into college? So bringing a group like College Summit here that piloted at Manual High School and IPS and seeing the huge gains in college matriculation rates at that school, I think really helped propel us. There was a great story of a guy named Jameel Cross who, before he started getting involved in College Summit, had no expectation that he was going to go to college. And I heard him speak about the fact that once he got into College Summit, that changed everything for him. He's now getting a degree in marketing at Bloomington, IU Bloomington. There's so many wonderful stories of kids who are in college today as a result of that. Another organization that we helped found or helped incubate was Summer Advantage USA. That's showing that if you provide a really enriching summer experience for kids, you can reverse what too often happens with low-income kids that lose somewhere between 3 months of both reading and math every year. And they found that they can actually cause those kids to make 2.5 to 3 months of gains if they put them in the right kinds of program. And so I think people saw the success of our strategy. They saw the success of the initiatives that we helped either bring here or incubate, and that's what really helped us to continue to grow.
So talk about, I know you had to raise a lot of money. So how hard or how easy was it when it came to getting the finances together?
Yeah. Well, you know, when you start an organization from scratch, the initial funding is always a challenge. And when you're new and you're untested and people are uncertain about exactly what your ideas are. So when we first launched the organization, we were fortunate that Mayor Peterson was the mayor and our board chair and was very eager to be helpful. And so that helped us in our fundraising. But what we have found is now that we can actually point to the successes that we have real data that we can show this is what these programs are producing, people have been really generous in our community. We launched a campaign in May of 2011 to raise $18 million by June of 2013, and we hit that target 13 months ahead of schedule. And I think the reasons for that are a couple. One, we were able to point to the successes that these programs were having and point to individual kids whose lives were being transformed as a result of this work. And so I think that got people excited. But I think the biggest factor is there's just a hunger in our community to do something about our education system, our public education system. People are looking for opportunities to see change, to really rethink what's possible in how we deliver our public education system. And so I think the reality that what the fact that we've been successful in raising that $18 million shows more than anything is just the appetite for leaders in our community to give to programs that are meeting the needs of kids.
Why is education so important?
Education is everything, and I'm sure you agree with that. Education opens up people's life opportunities. If you give someone an opportunity to develop themselves and to get fully educated, the sky is the limit. They can do anything. Conversely, if you don't get kids educated, if kids are not graduating from high school, it is catastrophic for their future. And that's never been more so than it is today in our information age economy. We need to make sure that we're educating people so that they can think critically and use their talents in the workforce and in whatever other ways they want to advance their lives. And if we see every day, unfortunately, the negative sides of kids not getting an adequate education, whether that's unemployment or underemployment, You see it in the criminal justice system. If you look at our prisons, they're filled with people who were not given the opportunity to fully develop their skill sets and get the educations that we all want them to have. Has such an enormous impact on the lives of individual kids. It also has an enormous impact just generally on our economy. So I mentioned earlier that there were 3,349 kids who from 2005 to 2010 didn't graduate from IPS. A study came out a few years ago that found that a high school dropout costs his or her community about $295,000 in both costs associated with public assistance and incarceration and other things. And so those 3,349 kids cost us, over the course of their lifetime, $1 billion. It's enormous, the cost to all of us. So we all need to care. I know that we need to be motivated first and foremost by the moral imperative to allow kids to fully develop their skills, but the economic costs to the community are extraordinary. And so this is something that every person in our city has to care deeply about.
How important is it to have supportive parents?
Well, parents are absolutely critical. Parents play the most important role in making sure that a child gets an excellent education. But I think it's also really important to emphasize that we can never let the fact that a student doesn't have an engaged, active parent be an excuse for why they didn't get an education. So is it important to have parents involved? Absolutely. Is there anybody more important than parents? No. But we also know that all kids, no matter what their familial circumstances, what their economic circumstances, if given the right supports and the right conditions, can excel. So we as a community have to take it as our responsibility to educate every child, no matter what kinds of situations they're dealing with when they walk through that schoolhouse door. But it also means that some of our schools that are dealing with kids from economically challenging backgrounds do face challenges and significant challenges that other schools don't face. And so we should think about what kinds of resources those schools need to be able to fully meet the needs of those kids.
So what does the future hold for the Mind Trust?
Well, we're deeply, deeply committed to the idea that every child in Indianapolis should have the opportunity to attend an excellent school and to fully develop their talents. And so we're going to continue to drive in that direction. We're optimistic as we look at the future. We kind of have to be optimistic to do this work. But as we look toward the future, we really see a lot of pieces in place in Indianapolis that you don't see in cities around the country. We have a network of talent and really innovative organizations that is the envy of similarly sized cities around the country. We have a community that's so committed to this, so focused on this. I don't think I've ever seen more focus on education than we have seen in Indianapolis over the last few years. So I think people recognize this is something that we really need to continue to focus on. We have a really constructive policy environment that's going to allow to continue to innovate in this state, continue to grow innovative schools, continue to give more flexibility to school districts to make the kinds of changes they need to really dramatically improve student outcomes.
He is Mr. David Harris, the founder and CEO of the Mind Trust. Mr. Harris, it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
That's our show for this evening. Remember, you may follow us on the World Wide Web at thederwinsmileyshow.com. And remember, my sole purpose, to inspire the greatness in you. I'll see you next time.